My parents tried to push me into funding my sister's dream gift using my own trust. When I didn't agree, things escalated quickly. My mom threatened to stop babysitting my 3-year-old and said she would disown me, so I left, just like my wallet. My mom once told me that being a good sister means sacrifice. That's funny because she never sacrificed anything for me, she just expected me to sacrifice everything for Brooke. Let me back up. My name is Darlene, I'm 27 years old and I live in a 2-bedroom rental apartment in Columbus, Ohio with my 3-year-old daughter, Haley. I work as a dental office manager. I'm not rich. I'm not broke either, but I'm definitely not the kind of person who has money to throw around. Every dollar I earn has a name on it, and most of those names are mortgage savings and Haley's future. So when my mom Judith called me on a random Tuesday evening and told me, told me, that I needed to buy my younger sister Brooke a brand new Lexus for her 20th birthday, I genuinely thought she was joking. I laughed. Like actually laughed out loud. Haley was sitting on the kitchen floor stacking plastic cups, and even she looked up at me like, "What's so funny, Mom?" And then Judith said, "I'm serious, Darlene. Your sister deserves something special. She's turning 20. That's a milestone. Now let me ask you something. Since when is 20 a milestone birthday that requires a luxury vehicle? Because I turned 20 in a studio apartment eating ramen with a broken air conditioner, and nobody bought me a bicycle, let alone a Lexus. But your mom. 20. Milestone. Lexus. Makes perfect sense. I said, "Mom, I can't buy Brooke a car. I'm saving for a house." And she said, and I will never forget this, "A house can wait. Your sister's birthday can't." Can you even imagine hearing that? A house for me and my daughter can wait, but a luxury car for my adult sister who, by the way, still lives at home rent-free and works part-time at a smoothie shop. That's the priority. Hey Judith. Hey. Now let me tell you about my family because you need the full picture to understand why this conversation even happened. My dad's name is Ray. He's a quiet man. He works as a warehouse supervisor, been doing it for over 20 years. He's the kind of guy who comes home, eats dinner, watches the news and doesn't get involved in drama unless Judith drags him into it. And unfortunately, Judith drags him into everything. Judith doesn't work. She hasn't worked since Brooke was born. She used to say she was a full-time mother, which fine, I respect that. But both her daughters are grown now and she still doesn't work. What she does do is manage everyone else's money like it's hers. She knows exactly how much I make. She knows exactly how much I have in savings. And the reason she knows? Because I made the mistake, the huge, colossal, life-altering mistake, of telling her 2 years ago when I was excited about hitting my savings goal. I told her I had almost $48,000 saved. I was proud. I called her crying happy tears because I'd been working toward a down payment on a house since Haley was born. Do you know what Judith said? She said, "That's great, honey. You know, Brooke could really use a new car." That was 2 years ago. 2 years. And she's been planting seeds ever since. So back to that Tuesday phone call. I told her no. Firmly. I said, "Mom, I'm not buying Brooke a Lexus. I love her but I need that money." And Judith hit me with the guilt trip express. She said, "I babysit Haley 3 days a week for free, Darlene. You don't think you owe this family something?" Now here's where it gets complicated because she wasn't wrong about the babysitting. She did watch Haley 3 days a week while I worked. And yes, that saved me a lot of money on childcare. But, and this is a big but, I also paid for most of Judith's monthly expenses. Her phone bill? Me. Her car insurance? Me. The groceries she said were for when Haley visits? Also me. I was spending close to $800 a month supporting my mother. So it wasn't free. It was an exchange. But Judith never saw it that way. She said, "Everything I do for you and you can't do this one thing for your sister?" One thing. One thing that costs more than most people's annual salary. For Mom. Just one tiny thing. I told her I'd think about it, which was a lie. I had no intention of thinking about it. I already knew the answer was no. But I said it because I wanted to get off the phone before Haley's bedtime routine started and I lost my mind entirely. The next morning I got a call from Ray, my dad. And guys, this is where it started to really hurt because Ray never calls me about stuff like this. He calls me to ask how Haley is doing or to tell me he saw a funny bumper sticker. He does not call me to talk about buying luxury cars for his other daughter. But Judith got to him. He said, "Hey Dar. Your mom mentioned something about Brooke's birthday. You think maybe you could help out?" I could hear it in his voice. He didn't want to be making this call. He sounded like a man reading a hostage note. But he made it anyway and honestly, that hurt more than anything Judith said. Because Ray was supposed to be the reasonable one. He was supposed to be on my side. And instead he was doing Judith's dirty work. I said, "Dad, do you actually think I should buy Brooke a Lexus?" And there was this long pause. Like uncomfortably long. And then he said, I think your mom feels strongly about it. That's not an answer, Ray. That's a weather report on Judith's emotions. But I let it go because I didn't want to fight with my dad. I never want to fight with my dad. So I told him the same thing I told Judith. I'll think about it. And for about a week things were quiet. I went to work. I picked up Haley from my mom's house. Judith smiled at me. Brooke smiled at me. Everything seemed normal. I actually thought maybe the whole thing had blown over. Ha. Cute. Sweet, naive little Darlene thinking Judith would just drop something. That's hilarious. That's like thinking a dog would just ignore a steak on the counter. It was never going to happen. Because exactly 8 days later, Judith invited me over for Sunday dinner, and that's when the real chaos started. And trust me, what happened at that dinner table? I still can't believe it actually happened. Because my own mother looked me in the eye, in front of my father, in front of my sister, in front of my 3-year-old daughter, and said something so unbelievably cold that I had to set down my fork and just breathe. But I'll get to that. Because what she said changed everything. And what I did after. Well, let's just say Judith wasn't expecting it. Not even a little bit. So there I was. Sunday dinner. Judith's house. The table was set all nice. She even used the good plates, which should have been my first red flag because Judith only uses the good plates when she wants something or when she's about to cause a scene. And apparently that night she wanted both. We were eating pot roast. I remember because Haley kept poking the carrots off her plate and giggling, and I was trying to get her to eat at least one before Judith made some comment about my parenting. Because yes, that's also something Judith does. She critiques how I raise my daughter while simultaneously demanding I fund my sister's lifestyle. Multitasking queen. Everything was fine for the first 15 minutes. Ray was talking about some issue at the warehouse. Brooke was on her phone under the table as usual. Haley was smashing a dinner roll into a flat disc like a tiny little baker. And then Judith cleared her throat. Now when Judith clears her throat like that, this specific, deliberate, theatrical throat clear, it means she's about to deliver a speech. And not the kind you want to hear. She looked right at me and said, Darlene, I've been thinking. Brooke's birthday is in 6 weeks and we still haven't settled this. Settled. Like it was a negotiation. Like there were 2 parties at the table discussing terms. There were not. There was Judith making demands and there was me saying no. That's not a negotiation. That's a wall talking to a boulder. I said, Mom, there's nothing to settle. I already told you I can't do it. And she said, in front of everyone, remember, can't or won't. Do you think there's a difference? Because I don't. When someone tells you no, the reason shouldn't matter. No is no. But Judith has never believed that. To Judith, no is just the opening line of a conversation she plans on winning. I said, both. I can't and I won't. I need that money for a house. And then here it comes, the thing I told you about. Judith put down her fork. She folded her hands on the table. She looked at me with this expression, this calm, terrifying expression like a villain in a movie who's about to reveal the master plan. And she said, if you won't do this for your family, then I won't be watching Haley anymore. And honestly, Darlene, maybe it's time I stop considering you my daughter altogether. At a dinner table. With pot roast. With my 3-year-old sitting right there smashing bread. Ray stopped chewing. Brooke actually looked up from her phone, which honestly might have been the most shocking part of the entire evening. And I just sat there staring at my mother thinking, did you really just threaten to disown me over a car? I looked at Ray. He was staring at his plate like it held the meaning of life. He didn't say a word. And guys, that silence from my father? That hurt almost as much as what Judith said. Because silence in that moment wasn't neutral. Silence was agreement. I took a breath. I wiped Haley's hands with a napkin. I picked up my purse. And I said very calmly, okay, Mom. If that's how you feel, then I guess we're done here. And I left. I packed up Haley, walked out the front door, drove home and cried in my parked car for 20 minutes while my daughter fell asleep in her car seat. Was I dramatic? Maybe. Was I wrong? I don't think so. But you tell me. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you can't tell if you're being strong or just stubborn. That night I did something I'd been putting off for months. I sat on my couch with my laptop, and I canceled every single payment I was making for Judith. Phone bill, canceled. Car insurance, off my account. The grocery delivery subscription I set up for her, gone. Every single dollar I was spending on that woman I redirected into my savings. $800 a month back in my pocket, just like that. And honestly, it felt terrifying. But it also felt like the first real decision I'd made for myself in years. The next morning I called my coworker Tamara, who I'd been friends with since I started at the dental office. Tamara is one of those people who gives you the truth even when you don't want to hear it, and I desperately needed someone to either validate me or tell me I was crazy. She did both, actually. She said, "Girl, you're absolutely right and you're absolutely insane for not doing this sooner." I also needed childcare. Fast. Because Judith wasn't going to watch Haley anymore, and I couldn't exactly bring a 3-year-old to a dental office. Well, I could, but I don't think the patients would appreciate Haley offering them stickers mid-root canal. Tamara connected me with her neighbor, a retired teacher named Gloria who ran a small home daycare. Gloria was kind, affordable, and, this is the important part, she didn't try to emotionally manipulate me every time I dropped off my kid. Revolutionary concept, right? For about 2 weeks things were quiet. Judith didn't call. I didn't call. Ray sent me one text that said, "Hope you and Haley are okay." That was it. One text. 7 words. "Thanks, Dad." Really going above and beyond there. And then Brooke called. Now Brooke and I have a complicated relationship. She's 7 years younger than me. When I was leaving for college she was still in elementary school. We never really grew up together, and by the time she was a teenager, Judith had already made it very clear that Brooke was the favorite. Brooke got the new clothes. Brooke got the later curfew. Brooke got the car at 16. A used one, but still. I got a bus pass and a lecture about responsibility. So when Brooke called me I thought maybe, just maybe, she was calling to say, "Hey, this is ridiculous, Mom's being crazy, I don't need a Lexus, I'm sorry." That would have been the sisterly thing to do. The decent thing to do. Instead she said, "Darlene, why are you being so selfish? Mom is really upset." Selfish. My 20-year-old sister who pays no rent, who has no real bills, who works 12 hours a week blending smoothies, called me selfish for not buying her a luxury car. I honestly almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was just sad. I said, "Brooke, I love you, but I can't spend my savings on a car for you. I have a daughter. I need a house." And she said, and this one really stung, "You always put Haley first like nobody else matters." Yeah, Brooke. That's called being a mother. That's literally what it is. You put your child first. That's the whole job description. But I didn't say that because I could hear Judith coaching her in the background. I could actually hear her whispering. It was like a bad ventriloquist act where you could see the puppet master's lips moving. I hung up. And for the first time in my life I didn't feel guilty about it. But here's where things took a turn I absolutely did not expect. Because about 3 days after that phone call from Brooke I got a call from Ray. And he didn't sound like a man reading a hostage note this time. He sounded angry. Not at me. "Judith," he said, "Dar, I need to tell you something. Your mother and I had a fight. A real one. First one like this in, I don't even know how long. My parents don't fight. They just don't." Ray avoids conflict like it's a pothole on the highway, and Judith always gets her way, so there's never been a reason for them to argue. But apparently something snapped. He told me that after I left that Sunday dinner, after I cut off Judith's payments, after Brooke's phone call backfired, Judith went into full meltdown mode. She told Ray that he needed to handle me. That he needed to go to my apartment, sit me down and make me see reason. And Ray, my quiet, non-confrontational stare at his plate father, looked at Judith and said, "No. Just no." One word. And according to Ray, Judith nearly lost her mind. He told me she screamed at him for 20 minutes. She called him weak. She said he was a terrible father. She said he was choosing me over the family, which was ironic because last time I checked I was also part of the family. But apparently in Judith's world, family means the people who do what Judith wants. Ray said to me, "Dar, I should have said something at that dinner. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry." And guys, I'm not going to lie, I started crying. Because I'd been waiting years, to hear my dad say that. To hear him acknowledge that he saw what was happening and that it wasn't okay. And it took all of this, the Lexus, the threats, the disowning, for him to finally open his eyes. But Judith wasn't done. Not even close. Because the very next day something happened that made everything worse. Something I never would have predicted, and something that proved to me that Judith's obsession with Brooke wasn't just favoritism. It was something deeper, something almost desperate. And what Brooke did when she found out our dad took my side. Let me just say this. I thought my sister was caught in the middle. I thought she was just following Judith's lead because she didn't know any better. I was wrong. Brooke knew exactly what she was doing. And what she did next made me realize that the sister I thought I had maybe never existed in the first place. But I'll tell you about that. Because what happened next. It honestly shook me. So Ray packed a bag and left. My quiet, conflict-avoiding father actually walked out. He drove to my Uncle Mitchell's place in Dayton at 11 o'clock at night with a duffel bag and what I imagine was the face of a man who just woke up from a 30-year nap. And what did Judith do when she found him gone the next morning? Call him? Worry? Reflect? No. She called me. 6 in the morning. And said, "Are you happy now? You destroyed my marriage." Not, "Is your father safe?" Not, "What happened?" Just blame. Aimed right at me like a missile. Classic Judith. I said, "Mom, Dad left because of how you treat people. That's not on me." She hung up. Now here's the part one didn't see coming, and it wasn't from Judith. It was from Brooke. My baby sister, who I thought was just caught in the middle. Who I thought was being manipulated. Turns out I was giving her way too much credit. She sent me a text that night. 4 paragraphs long. Told me I tore the family apart. That Judith was barely eating. That I was a horrible sister and a horrible daughter. And then right at the end she wrote, "You're not even really family anymore. You're just someone who used to live here." 20 years old wrote that to me. And the phrasing? It was pure Judith. Every word. Brooke didn't write that message on her own. She channeled our mother like a medium at a seance. But here's what made it worse. She chose to. Nobody held a gun to her head. She wanted to be Judith's weapon. I think she liked it. Do you think I'm wrong for seeing it that way? Because I went back and forth on it for days. Maybe she's young. Maybe she doesn't know better. But 20 is old enough to know that you don't use someone's child against them. And yes, she did that too. A few days later, another message. "I hope Haley grows up and treats you the way you treat mom." My 3-year-old. Dragged into this mess by her own aunt. That one nearly broke me. I sat in my car after dropping Haley at Gloria's and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. But I didn't break. Because I had a kid counting on me and a house to save for, and I was not going to let them burn my life down. Tamar kept me sane during that stretch. Every lunch break in the break room, just listening. Not fixing. Not advising. Just hearing me. Sometimes that's the only thing you need. Then about 2 weeks after Ray left, everything went quiet. Judith stopped calling. Brooke stopped texting. Silence. And with Judith, silence is never peace. It's usually the calm before something worse. But this time it wasn't strategy. It was collapse. Ray told me Judith went to her sister, my Aunt Patricia, and had a full breakdown. And Patricia, who loves Judith but has absolutely no tolerance for drama, sat her down and said something like, "You're about to lose your husband and your oldest daughter over a car for a girl who doesn't even appreciate what she has. Is that really worth it?" And I guess hearing it from someone outside the war zone finally cracked something open. Because 2 days later Judith called me. No yelling. No guilt. No tears. She just said, "Darlene, I think I need help." Judith. The woman who once said therapy is for people who can't handle their problems. Asking for therapy. I nearly dropped my phone. I told her I thought that was a good idea. And then I said what I'd been holding in for years. "Mom, I love you. But I can't be in your life if it means being treated like an ATM and punished every time I put my daughter first. Things need to actually change. Not just quiet down. Change." She was quiet. Then she said, "I know." 2 words. But the right 2. Now I wish I could tell you everything magically healed after that. Beautiful family dinner, group hug, credits roll. But life doesn't work that way. What actually happened was slow. Judith started seeing a therapist, Dr. Kwan, once a week. Ray moved back home after about a month, but with conditions. He told Judith no more financial demands on me. No more pitting daughters against each other. And if she tried it again, he was gone for good. He meant it. Judith and I barely talked for a couple of months. And honestly, that was fine. Distance was healthy. I focused on Haley. I focused on saving. And 5 months after that disaster of a Sunday dinner, I did the thing that made all of it worth it. I bought a house. 3 bedrooms. Small backyard. A park 2 blocks away. It needed new cabinets and the bathroom tile was honestly criminal. But it was mine. And the first night, sleeping on a mattress on the floor because the movers weren't coming until morning, Haley looked at me and said, "Mama, is this our house?" "Yeah, baby. This is our house. I like it." And she rolled over and fell asleep in 30 seconds because she's 3 and that's their superpower. But I stayed awake staring at my ceiling, and thought about every single moment that led there. The fights. The silence. The tears in my car. And I realized the worst thing my family did to me accidentally became the best thing that happened to me. It forced me to stop giving everything away and start building something for myself. Well, Judith made real effort over time. She came to see the house. Brought a little succulent in a pot that said, "Home sweet home." Walked through every room without a single critical word and said, "You did good, Darlene." And she meant it. But Brooke? Never apologized. Not once. Not for the text. Not for what she said about Haley. Nothing. I reached out twice. First time left on read. Second time she wrote back, "I don't really have anything to say to you." And that was my answer. People say you should never give up on family. Maybe that's true sometimes. But there's a difference between giving up on someone and accepting that someone gave up on you. I didn't close the door on Brooke. She closed it. And I finally stopped trying to force it back open. Ray comes over every Saturday now. Pancakes with Haley. She calls him Pop Pop and he turns into a complete puddle every time. He tells me he's proud of me. I waited my whole life to hear that and it still makes my eyes sting. Judith is a work in progress. The old Judith slips out sometimes. A comment about my spending, a nudge to be the bigger person with Brooke. But she catches herself now. Mid-sentence sometimes. And that's something. It's not perfection. But I stopped expecting perfection a long time ago. Me. I have my house. I have my daughter. I have a dad who finally showed up. I have Tamara who still eats lunch with me even though the crisis is over. And I have Gloria who sends me photos of Haley painting and dancing, and every single one reminds me why I said no to that Lexus. Because that money Judith wanted me to drain for a car? It became a roof over my daughter's head. A backyard where she chases butterflies. A front door I lock every night knowing everything behind it is mine because I fought for it. So if you're out there and someone in your family is making you feel guilty for choosing yourself, for choosing your child, for saying no when everything inside you wants to give in just to keep the peace, hear me on this. Keep the peace with yourself first. Everyone else can figure it out. And if you made it to the end, thank you. That really means something to me. If anything here hit home or if you've been through something like this, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If you enjoyed this, a like helps more people find it. And if you disagreed with something I did, that's totally fair. Tell me about it. I'm not going anywhere. I've got a house now, remember? Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. And take care of the people who actually take care of you.